listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
Hey, how's it going? Rob Lane here, and thank you for choosing to listen to my podcast, Straight to Video. So, as many of you know, it's been 10 years since Straight to Video was originally launched as a music project back in 2013. So I've mentioned it before that around this time there seemed to be a real resurgence for the love of all things VHS. Certainly social media would have really helped this and allowed word to spread, but one of the big things for me that really struck a chord was the documentary Adjust Your Tracking, which came out and put a real spotlight on this world of collecting that was essentially, it was a dead format. For some reason though, which resonates perhaps even more today, was the nostalgia element to these tapes. Yes, it was cool to hold in your hand, maybe own a film that perhaps never made it to DVD, but for some reason, for a lot of us, those plastic boxes held stories and memories, and that was one of the key reasons we wanted them in our collections once again. So on today's show, I speak to the director of Adjust Your Tracking, Dan Kinem, as he launches the 10th anniversary edition of the documentary, which is packed to the hill with bonus footage and released on Blu-ray through the Vinegar Syndrome label. Dan takes us back to how the film originally got underway, some of his early movie influences, thoughts on VHS collecting today, and where he sees things going over the next 10 years. This was a blast and so cool to get Dan on the show. As always, this Straight to Video podcast is proudly presented to you in association with Affinity Photo. Affinity Photo is an incredible piece of photo editing software which I use for graphic design, and it's used to create the podcast's episode artwork you see each week, and it's also an extremely affordable alternative to other programs on the market. So if you can, please check them out at affinity.serif.com. Alright, if you want to pick up a copy of Adjust Your Tracking, then head on over to adjustyourtracking.com or find it at vinegarsyndrome.com. But for now, please enjoy my straight to video chat with Dan Kinem.
Hey, what's up?
How's it going, Dan?
Good.
Where you at? It looks very colourful in the background.
This is like my movie room, I guess you could say. Yeah, this is where I hang out a lot.
I saw a License to Drive poster, so we're off to a good start.
Yes, that's the best movie ever.
Sweet. How you doing? All good?
Good. Yep. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good, mate. Pretty good. Thanks for doing this for us. It's really cool to hook up.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me.
It's been 10 years since the release of the documentary, Adjust Your Tracking, which came at a time as I was just getting back into VHS collecting. And from what I can tell, a lot of other people too around that time. Did you think at that time of its release it would have gone on to have the success it had and you'd be celebrating it with a 10-year anniversary reissue?
I didn't. I knew at the time that there was like a resurgence in VHS. A lot of people were getting into it, but a lot back then was small compared to what it is now. I didn't know that it would like continue to grow and reach the level that it has, but I'm glad we got in when we did. I think we started working on it in 2011 and then it came out in 2013, and it was just that perfect timing of, a lot of people getting into it. There was new releases. There was the VHS anthology movie, House of the Devil. A lot of people were talking about it, so it was perfect timing, and I'm happy that, people still care about it 10 years later.
I'd forgot about House of the Devil, yeah, because they did like a VHS issue with that as well. Yeah, everything just kind of converged at the same time.
Yep. Now there's so many new VHS. At the time, it was like maybe 20 new releases. I think like Lewis from Massacre Video had just maybe done 555, and there was, things here and there. But now it's like every movie that comes out gets a VHS. Every horror movie, Terrifier 2, like it's every single thing has a limited VHS. So, that's cool. I love VHS, so I love it.
When did you decide to dive back into the film to have this new edition all done and ready in time for this year?
Well, before the Vinegar Syndrome partnership, I was tossing around the idea of possibly doing a sequel, just because it had been a lot of time. And like I said, so much had happened since then. But then the Vinegar Syndrome thing happened, and I was like, oh, it's lining up with the 10-year anniversary. I feel like it would be cool to check back in with some of the collectors from the movie, see if they still collect and see what's going on with them. And when we made it, I didn't even have a Blu-ray player. I don't even know if Blu-ray was that popular at the time, but now I love Blu-ray. So I wanted the movie for myself on Blu-ray and just to have a nice special feature pack release. So it all worked out. out. And it was nice to be able to kind of make it like we did 4 releases before Adjust Your Tracking came out. So it was nice to show what we were about and that way, and then release, the movie that we actually made.
When was the last time you'd seen the film?
Let's see. Probably like 8 years ago. I think maybe 8 years ago there was some screenings and stuff, but then doing this release, we had to do a commentary. And also when somebody would have bought like the VHS release that we used to sell, I would have to dub it. So I would catch little bits here and there. But yeah, probably 8 years ago when the last time I watched the full thing.
I bet you could tell like how much everything had changed. It seemed almost like old fashioned watching something even from 2013.
Yes. At the time, it was the stuff that was popular at the time of making it is like not popular, like Wizard Video. It was before like Charles Band found all those like boxes or whatever and kind of ruined the value of those. At the time, shot on video type of stuff wasn't like as crazy as it got. Yeah, there's just so much difference since we made the movie. And a lot of the people we talk to in the movie might not collect anymore, or maybe they do. So you'll see it's a lot's changed.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. I mean, without going into too much detail, is there anything we can expect from this re-release with new features and bonus or deleted footage? Because I know you're a fan of like really adding as much extra content as possible to your releases. So is it stocked high with extra stuff?
Yeah, I think there's 16 hours of special features. I don't even know how like we fit that much on 2 discs. Like it is seriously packed. We did so many new interviews and, the new commentary, but then we also went back into the archives and dug up so much footage that we never released. Some of it was like really good. I'm like, how did this not make it into the movie? Like some super funny stuff. A lot of collection tours and a lot of video stores existed still at the time. So when we were traveling, we went to a lot of stores and, bought tapes and stuff. So there's a lot of that, which is cool to see just because there's hardly any video stores left. So we talked to some owners and you could see like different stuff that we bought at the time. And then there's a few full interviews that we put on there too of like personal favorites that were in the movie, but we just put the full interview on there for people to see. So just so much on there. Like it's going to take more than like a day to watch everything.
I'm excited to dive in, especially with you teasing saying some people aren't collecting anymore. So do they go into the reason why they're not collecting?
Oh, there's so many. Some people hate VHS now. Like there's some crazy interviews we got with like people just flipping out on new collectors and flipping out on like just VHS prices and so much. Then there's some people I'm surprised they still are collecting and their collections are insane. Like they show off some tapes they've gotten since we made the movie. So there's a lot for people to check out.
Oh man, sounds great. Sounds great. How have you seen things change over the past decade? Without going into any negatives, what have you enjoyed seeing happen?
I love seeing more collectors get into it and just the stuff that people have found over the years. That's why I always kind of liked VHS is it's never ending. Like stuff that I didn't know existed is still being found. There was a crazy Night of the Living Dead big box that was found this year on a company that I collect that no one had ever seen pictures of or anything. Stuff like that really makes me still love tapes. Certain movies are popping up. So I'm always into that. That's like kind of what I've dove into is finding the super, super obscure movies and super, super obscure releases. And I love that because of, Facebook and Instagram and all the groups. You can learn so much from all the other people. Somebody will be like, I just started collecting and I found this movie.
You're like, holy shit.
It'll be like the rarest, most insane thing ever. I'm like, oh my. So it's sharing the information, sometimes sharing the movies too and making copies and stuff. It's fun to be able to just keep seeing new stuff that you haven't seen before.
I want to kind of trace the evolution of how the film originally came to be because there'll be a lot of our listeners who aren't familiar with the film. I've been pimping it for the last 10 years. We did a screening of it. I don't know if you remember, our old Screen 22 in Nottingham. I reached out to you, said, would it be cool to screen it? And I met a guy there, my friend Andrew Horn, who's like a big VHS guy in the UK, and we've been friends ever since. So it's not only just collecting stuff, it's bringing people together and friendships and all that kind of stuff. So I just want to shout about it as much as I can. Yeah, so I think the seed, if I'm right, the seed was originally sown whilst you were out in college with your friend who had some like obscure tapes, which started the original VH Shitfest blog writing about these odd movies. Is that kind of where the seed of it began?
Yeah, in 2010 is where it all started. I did a review in like a zine for Birds 2, which at the time had no Blu-ray or disc or anything.
I didn't even know there was a Birds 2.
Oh, really? Yes. Watch Birds 2. It's terrible. But like just the fact it exists is awesome. And it was only on tape. So I reviewed that separate from my friend randomly going to college and only having a VCR with like a stack of tapes. So those two things combined, that formed the website where we would just review movies only on tape. So we started that summer of 2010. And by the end of 2011, we were already working on Adjust Your Tracking. That's how much. I didn't even know there was other collectors in 2010. I think I didn't join like the Facebook groups or anything until like January 2011. And like it just blew up from there. Once I started meeting all these people, they became friends and we started talking more and more. I'm like, okay, yeah, there's a whole world of collectors that are getting into it or have been into it forever. I feel like this needs to be documented. And there's a lot of people who wanted to talk about it.
Is that some part of your background sort of thing then? Is that something you were studying at college to go into like documentary filming or?
Yeah, I was in print journalism. So I always loved doing interviews and writing articles and stuff like that. So it kind of was just a natural thing. And then the guy that I made the movie with, I call him Dabby Doo, but his name's Levi. He went to school for film. So we were able to use all the film equipment at the college for free. That saved us so much money. That was like a whole thing too, having to take out the film equipment over the summer. They did not trust us that we were going to even like return to school or anything. They thought we were going to take all the film equipment. So we teamed up and made the movie. It kind of just kept growing. At first, we thought maybe do like a YouTube thing. I thought maybe we would be in it looking for video stores and looking for tapes and kind of just like talking to people along the way. And then the first weekend that we went to New York City, it kind of changed because we got so many good interviews. We talked to Lloyd Kaufman, Tony Timpone from Fangoria, and just a bunch of collectors. And on the way back from that trip, we were like, okay, yeah, we need to do like an actual movie, get a ton of interviews, as many as we can. And then we decided to make a Kickstarter to raise the gas money. We were like, okay, yeah, if we can get the gas money covered for this trip around the country, like we're good. And we ended up raising that and then some. Traveled literally around the entire country and got over 100 interviews with different people. And it was one of the best trips ever. It was a month long, just with, how many people were there? My 3 other friends. And just, we had a great time making the movie.
Any idea how many miles you covered in the end? Or how was the furthest point of the US you made it to?
I should figure that out because we went so far. And we also had different side things that we did. So we added even more miles to it. We got trapped on a mountain at one point. That was insane. And we had to postpone a bunch of interviews because we literally were like lost. So it was a great time. One day I'll calculate exactly how many miles.
Was you like thrift storing as well at the same time?
Every time we would have like a long drive, we would just be looking up video stores and looking up thrift stores. One of us would be taking turns calling them, do you have VHS? Do you have VHS? We stopped so many places and found so much. The crazy thing is we did basically the exact same trip, me and the co-director, when we toured the movie around the country once it was finally finished. That trip, we wanted to pack the car with tapes because every stop we would do like a swap meet, like a video store setup, and like stuff kept selling. So we needed to keep finding more and more tapes along the way. And that was also one of the best times of my life, just literally digging for tapes and showing the movie and going from town to town. It was awesome.
Oh, that's fantastic. Like I say, it began like writing about odd films and unusual films that perhaps people don't know about. Have you always been into, let's say, weird films growing up, or was those initial stack of tapes the first time you'd seen something a little bit left field?
I was always into movies. My parents had a VCR and had a movie collection, and I would try and like watch a new movie from it every night. And they had different types of stuff. I mean, not like weird, but Puppet Master, Evil Dead. I remember my grandpa giving my dad, I was super, super young, he gave him a copy of Evil Dead. And like they were trying to not let me look at the cover, even they were like passing it around, just trying to like not let me see it. And like I kept begging and begging to watch it.
They're just making you want to watch it more if they're not letting you see the cover.
Yes, exactly. I wanted to see it so bad. I remember being able to watch PG-13, PG movies, and then finally convincing my dad, I need to go to R. Like, I'm ready for R movies. Like, I was super young, and he was like, certain ones that he was letting me. And then finally, just the floodgates open. He's like, all right. And then we watched Basket Case, Fargo. That was like a double feature we had in one night. We were watching so much stuff. But as I got older, I started going to, there was like a film festival in town. So I was seeing, you know, independent movies and obscure stuff, but they would also show older movies too, like Attack of the Beast Creatures, which is a really, you know, obscure movie. And I think Maltesta's Carnival of Blood, that's another really obscure one that I think finally got a Blu-ray, but that kind of just birthed it. I was like, I need to see more. I want to see just crazy stuff I've never heard of. I didn't realize that VHS had so much that would never make it to DVD. So once that realization came in, that's when it was all over from there. I'm like, okay, VHS is the format where I could see the weirdest stuff because it was so popular for so long and everything got released on it pretty much. Once I opened up to around the world, it was the end for me. So many crazy movies.
But not just crazy movies, you also love Almost Famous.
That movie is so good. Another about me being like a journalist and going to school for that, I saw it at the perfect time where I really, you know, I loved old music and all that type of stuff. So it just fit perfectly. I love Cameron Crowe, Fast Times and Singles, all that stuff. So Almost Famous is just, you know, still, I think maybe my second favorite movie.
What's the first?
Fanny and Alexander is the first. That movie is just a straight up masterpiece. I love it. The TV version, the 6-hour cut of it is so good.
What introduced you to that?
That's a good question. I think going to the library a lot as a kid, they had a big Criterion section. And I remember renting Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie. And then also kind of it's an easy gateway to like Kurosawa is like, you know, Star Wars and THX, Luke, like that whole thing, which I was already into. So then Seven Samurai, Hidden Fortress, like all those movies I got into, and it just spiraled from there. I'm like, oh, I probably saw like Seven Samurai and Seventh Seal on the shelf together. I'm like, what's this? And then Bergman from there. And I remember watching Fanny and Alexander for the first time, and it ended. I ran upstairs to my parents because I lived in the basement at the time. I was super young. I'm like, we need to watch this. I'm like, you got 6 hours. I think we watched half of it that night and then half the next night, but it just blew me away. Love that movie.
How big a collection did you have when you set out making the film and you just going in to see all these basements full of stuff? Was you a little bit overwhelmed by how deep some people were into collecting at that point?
Yes. I mean, I had thousands at the time. I would say maybe like 3,000. And we went to some collections that were insane, like 10,000 plus. I've been to some video stores that had over 10,000, which is insane. So from that, I think maybe I was at my peak with the most tapes. Well, maybe now I'm at my peak actually, which is crazy. But I would say when the movie came out, which was end of 2013, that's probably when I had the most. And I think maybe it was 8,000. At the time, I was buying every horror movie. I'm like, I don't need every single horror movie and every single release of that movie. And I was buying like everything on certain companies. So I'd have just 50 normal dramas that are easily accessible just because it was a Thorn EMI clamshell. I'm like, I like how all these look. So I was like, I need to calm down on that. I need to like focus in. And I did a big purge at the time and got it down to about like 2,000. And now I'm back up. I have no clue. It's insane.
Once word gets around that Dan's the video guy, all of a sudden people are just, Dan, I'm finding these videos in the attic. Do you want them? My auntie's got them.
Yes. And it's crazy too. It's 90% of the time, it'll be like just basic, normal movies. And then you get something that's amazing. Somebody will just be like, yeah, my parents owned a video store and like, here's all the stuff. It's the best feeling in the world to just have somebody, you know, reach out because they know that you're the VHS guy or the movie guy or whatever. It's, you know, a great feeling to just get some great stuff from people that realize you like it.
And you have to say yes to everything just in case there is that one tape tape in there.
Yes, I say, oh, that's another thing that's you asked me about what's changed. It's like I also sell tapes like when I get doubles or just stuff I don't need. And when I first started, a normal basic movie kind of was just garbage. You would say it wasn't worth anything. But over the years, it's like those normal movies have like gone up in value. Goonies, for example, that wouldn't have even been worth like a quarter back when I started. And now it's like a $20 tape. Even something like Gremlins will still sell in like a fire sale. They don't go for a ton, but every year that passes, it's like more people get into it and they're like, oh, I had Gremlins as a kid. I want it. And when you get 10 people that want it, then it has some value. And that's what's happened. It's like when I buy a video store now.
You'd have never said that 15 years ago. When I buy a video store now.
I know, that's true. Exactly. But, which is crazy that I can still somewhat say it. I mean, it's getting few and far between, but still once in a while, I'll be able to get a video store nowadays that maybe closed down forever ago and they still have this stuff, or is at the end of their run now. But at least 50% of the stock is like worth something. But back in the day, it'd be like 10% of the stock was worth something. So it's crazy how over time it's changed that way.
Yeah, you totally answered the next thing I was going to ask about, because I was interested in that. Because certainly over here in the video collecting world, when you did Adjust Your Tracking, it was the things which were collectible, like all the really obscure stuff. But over here, definitely, and it sounds like the same over there, as things have got more and more popular, all the mainstream rental tapes, they're the ones that are now commanding a good amount of money as well. Because I say it only takes a couple of people to get bidding on it on eBay, and that price suddenly just rockets all of a sudden. I say it's just the nostalgia element, people remembering attachments to those films, no matter how mainstream they are. It's like stuff like Lost Boys over here is a highly collectible tape. License to Drive is a highly collectible tape over here as well, surprisingly.
Both of those sell here too. And if I had the opportunity to get a license to drive from a different country too, I would probably the hoarder aspect of me, but I would take it just because I love that movie. And I feel like a lot of people agree with that too. So you probably have Americans bidding on UK stuff, Japanese stuff. Like I have like a Japanese Howard the Duck tape for no reason at all, but just because I like Howard the Duck and it had a cool cover. So you even get that aspect. I'm sure people in the UK or France or wherever want American tapes just because they love the movie. They might already have their country's release of Basket Case or whatever, but they want the US one. So that drives the price up too, which is cool. I love it, finding those different countries' cool releases of stuff.
My friend Charlie over here, he collects every version of the Wraith possible.
I think I saw today you might have got like a new poster for that. I know him too. He's a great guy. I think he's sending me something I need, like a UK tape of an American movie that never came out here that we might be maybe working on a release of eventually. So he's hooking me up with that, which is cool.
Legend. Nice one.
Yes.
Nice one. So you've obviously brought a few video stores in the past. What's more exciting? What tapes you're going to find? Or if it's a video store, if they've got posters or standees like the Friday the 13th thing behind you and stuff like that, is that the exciting part of it? What else there might be in there?
I think what else might be in there, because over the years, I've gotten into collecting shirts too, old shirts. That's probably my biggest regret on those trips early on, probably from 2015 and before. Rarely did I ask. Once in a while, I'd ask if they had promo items and stuff. But I know for a fact, probably so many of them had like the old shirts and hats and pins that the companies would send. And those not only go for a ton of money, but I want them all for my collection. So it's a huge regret. But yeah, buying a store, if they have standees and the weird, like Ghoulies blow up toilet or the Children of the Corn 3 big blow up corn thing. There's so much weird and interesting promotional items. Some of those are way rarer than any tape could be because they got thrown out and there wasn't that many. So
there's that like ceramic Return of the Living Dead 2 thing. Have you seen that?
Yes, I had one. I regret selling it. I bought some guy's collection. He had some insane promotional stuff. It was overwhelming. I should have handpicked a few of those things to keep. But at the time, it was me and a friend of mine who bought it all. And we were like, okay, let's just sell it. We can make a lot of money. And I regret that for sure. He had so much insane stuff. And that Return of the Living Dead 2 thing was one of them.
It's always the stuff you get rid of. That's the stuff you regret.
Oh,
I think that's just a hoarder syndrome. I want it back.
Yes. Oh, I think about the stuff I got rid of. There's not many tapes that like I really, really loved that I had to get rid of. Once it goes into my like personal collection, normally I just keep it forever. But there's a few that I'm like, oh, I need that back. And that's all I think about.
I think one of the most fun things that initially drew me back in when I began collecting again was it was essentially like a really cheap hobby, and it was fairly inexpensive to amass a good collection reasonably fast. But now it's getting so popular, that's not always the case. I almost like feel sorry for people who are just getting into it now.
Yes. Oh, it's so much better to be at the point that me and you are at, where we don't need a ton of stuff. We can just get things here and there whenever we like find a good deal or whatever. If I was like just getting into it and wanted to buy a ton of stuff, it would cost so much money. I mean, if you're getting into it now and don't care about what you're getting, really, you just love movies and want to get, you don't care what it is, really, you can still get it cheap. Thrift stores still will have them. But if you want the quality over quantity, you definitely will end up having to pay unless you're really, really patient and can kind of find those good deals every now and then.
That is some good advice, I think. Be patient, because it does always crop up at some point. As long as it's not super, super rare. Well, it might do eventually, but most stuff will crop up and fall in your lap eventually.
Oh, there's been so many times where I've, lost on eBay and something's gone for way too much and I've been really annoyed, and then somehow I'll get it cheap a year later and I'm like, oh, wow, like it all worked out. I could have wasted a bunch of money and got it then, or now I'm just happy that. But then I also sell stuff. So, I mean, I could have got a second copy then and sold it. So it's like, I mean, whatever. But yeah, if you are patient, you can get the good deals eventually, unless it's God level holy grail. Then you might need to just get it when you can get it, because who knows when you'll have another chance.
Yeah. One such film which gets mentioned in the documentary is Tales from the Quadhead Zone.
Yes.
Is that VHS as highly sought after to this day? I mean, do you think there are any copies still out there, or has pretty much every copy been snapped up now by people such as yourself?
I think there's probably still copies out there. I think it was 2018 I found one at a video store. The only one that like I've actually found in the wild, and it was only $1. So I mean, if it happened then...
Was your hand shaking?
Oh, my girlfriend was there. Like, I pointed it out. I'm like, oh my... I was like dripping in sweat. I remember like burying it in a stack, because once in a while you'll go to like a video store and the person will start looking stuff up and they'll start from like the top of the stack. I'm like, I need to bury this just in case randomly he starts looking like... And if you Google Tales from the Quadhead Zone, you'll get articles about it being one of the rarest tapes. You'll get adjust your tracking articles. So I just needed to avoid that. So I buried it in there. I remember snapping like the worst picture ever where you could like just see it in the stack. I was like, this is the best day ever. But yeah, that's still highly collectible. I saw somebody posted their wish list on one of the Facebook groups yesterday and it was on there. It was like right at the top. So people are still wanting that. It's still going to go for easily over 1,000.
You do realize most of this is probably your fault as well.
I saw somebody like blaming Adjust Your Tracking for why prices are high. Maybe that's one of the reasons, but I don't know if it's the only reason. But I love how many collectors there are. I love everything. But yeah, the price is skyrocketing after the documentary and after just spreading the word about it so much. Yeah, it's a double-edged sword when I can't get what I want for cheap anymore, but whatever. It's still cool.
Any idea how many copies of that film were actually produced?
I don't know. I think Lewis from Massacre, he knew, and I remember him saying an amount. Maybe it was like 300 or something, but a lot of them got destroyed or got moldy. And then, of course, a lot of video stores shut down and just threw out their stuff. So that's a low number compared to, I mean, there's other rare tapes that had thousands and thousands of copies. So having less than 1,000 is crazy. And there's also the other release of it too, the even rarer clamshell release of it. I've only seen 2 ever. So who knows how many were made of that, but that's a rare movie. Awesome movie.
What I found awesome is that one of the copies you own originally belonged to the late Howie Pyro of Degeneration and Danzig.
Oh yeah, he was great. I'm annoyed because there was so many times that we were going to meet up to when I was in California. And one time he was like getting his teeth fixed. Another time he was like busy. And then one time we had to leave early. So I never got to see his collection actually in person. But through talking to him over the years, like I heard so many crazy stories. He had a crazy shirt collection, I heard, and he would rent his shirts to like movies that were set in the 80s and stuff like that, which is insane to think about, but awesome. He was a great guy. R.I.P.
What was it? Did he like post about it sometime? That's how you became aware that he actually owned a copy of it?
Yes, the guy that I mentioned who had the crazy promo collection, he posted that he was looking for it, and then Howie posted that he had it, and they worked out something. I don't know what kind of deal they worked out. And then I ended up buying that guy's collection a few years later. So I had both copies. One was from Scarecrow Video in Seattle, and then the other was from him. So both copies had an amazing history and story. And the person who bought Howie's copy is a good friend of mine, and his collection, he has like one of the best, absolute best collections in the world. So like, I'm happy that he has it. I know he'll never get rid of it. And it's kind of like a museum, what he has. So it's a good spot for it.
One tape you mentioned that I think it was in a more recent video as being highly collectible is it Cards of Death?
Yes, Cards of Death is so rare. That movie came out on like, I think DVD, maybe it was a Blu-ray release. I can't remember. And it was, I swear, on the box advertised first time ever released in America. People only thought that there was a Japanese tape of it. And so to find out that there was actually a US tape and the people that made it didn't even know about it. The people that re-released it didn't know about it. That was insane, and still never seen another copy. And a plus to that is the movie's awesome. There's two other things I know were released by that same company, and I have one of them. I'm still looking for the other thing. That company must have made no copies of anything because they're so rare.
Where'd you find your copy?
Somebody found it. I forget even who it was now. They found it on eBay. It was like, buy it now, and they bought it. And then I basically had to beg them, just keep begging them for it. I'm like, I need this. And finally I wore them down and got it. That was the most I ever paid for a tape too, but it was worth it. Anytime I have to pay a ton, I'm like, I'll just sell some stuff that I don't need that I have. And then I'm like, oh, it was kind of like a trade. I just traded this stack of stuff for that. That's how I justified in my head.
That's the best way, man. You can sleep a bit better at night doing that.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Which tape has eluded you to this day? There's got to be some.
Oh, there's so many. It's like I don't even want to mention half of them because I'm like, I don't want more people looking for them. I mentioned that Night of the Living Dead. It's on Chamber of Horrors. That's the company. And they did big boxes kind of classic horror, but the art is always insane and they're just super nice releases. I would say that Night of the Living Dead is up there for me. What else? There's a lot of super obscure shot on video stuff where there might only be like a handful made, but I think my wish list still has hundreds on it.
Hundreds.
It'll never end. I'm always looking. And this year alone, I've gotten maybe 40 things I never knew existed. So those weren't on my wish list. So I couldn't even cross anything off. But, I'm always adding.
For the re-release of Adjust Your Tracking, you've partnered up with Vinegar Syndrome, who you've previously been releasing such obscure movies as stuff I'd not heard of, like Corn Shucker, Blood Hunter, and a more recent release, Justice Ninja Style, which I think I need to check that one out. Because apparently, is there quite a good backstory to that?
You need to watch Justice Ninja Style. For one, it's impossible to hate it. It's impossible not to have fun with it. The movie's awesome. And the interview that we put on there with the guy who made the movie is insane. Like his life. He had the most crazy life ever. Every story he told was, this should be a movie. This should be a movie. Like he trained with Elvis. He had like a roller coaster that he was the mascot for at Six Flags called the Ninja. He won championships like around the world in karate. He was a private detective. He wrote a book about how to become a private detective that I've read, and it was amazing. He has so many good stories. Definitely worth checking out.
That's a good enough sell as it is, but give people a bit of a rundown. What's the synopsis of the film itself? Is it based on a true story?
Well, I guess he was a ninja, and he says he's a ninja, basically. And then they were like, let's make a movie and they'll have a ninja in it. And that was him. So, but yeah, the plot is crazy. It's actually more violent than you would think. But basically, two cops rape and accidentally kill somebody, and then they blame another guy for it, and then that guy needs to clear his name, and for some reason a ninja helps him clear his name. It's amazing. It was made in a small town in Missouri. The whole town helped out. The soundtrack's great. All the supporting characters and the locations and just what they were able to do, being able to use like a small town, like have the actual cops from the town play cops in the movie.
What year was it?
85. So it's perfect. Mid 80s, just great. There's two versions of the movie on the release. He went back and added a backstory to the ninja. So there's an extended cut. that came out in 1989. So watch the first version first. And then if you want to know even more, you can watch, I think it's like 20 minutes longer. And that's great too. That was called The Ultimate Warrior. He renamed it. Great movie. Definitely worth everyone checking out if they haven't.
How did that land on your radar?
Just through collecting over the years. It's super obscure. It only had a VHS and it kind of gained, I guess, a little bit of like a following in the VHS community. People would mention it. And so I added it to my list. And this was maybe 8 years ago or so. And I hardcore tried to track it down, kept trying to track it down, finally did. And the movie blew me away. I'm like, back before the Vinegar Syndrome deal, I would release, do small VHS releases and do things here and there just for fun. But it wasn't that serious. But once the Vinegar Syndrome deal came about, I'm like, Justice Ninja Style needs to be one of our releases. Like, I need to license this movie. So I reached out. I was able to go to Missouri, talk to everyone, and it all came together. Thank God. I wanted that so bad.
What goes into like releasing a film like this? I say these things are like things which are either made by friends, never got a mainstream release, or the filmmakers are maybe like one and done. So is there like a lot of investigative work involved?
Yes, that's probably my favorite thing about kind of what connects everything. The print journalism major that I, like in college, VHS hunting, the documentaries. I love the investigating aspect, trying to track people down, find little bits of information here and there. That's probably my favorite thing to do. That's what I do most days when I'm like trying to track down a movie or license something. And that's how I did this. Sometimes I'll find people on Facebook or they'll have a website, but this guy didn't have Facebook, didn't have a website, didn't have anything. So I had to reach out to certain people that were able to get me a phone number. And then I called him and we like talked, and then I got his email and we talked more and more and more. I kind of had to show him that I was serious, that I liked the movie, and that we would do, a good release, because over the years, people might not trust certain things. Maybe they had a bad deal back in the day or didn't make any money when they initially released it. So gaining that trust with the filmmakers, and I was able to do that. Thank God, got the contract signed and was able to get, all the interviews done. And he gave me access to everything he had on the release. There's hundreds of never before seen pictures, outtakes, and all this footage that no one's ever seen before. I was able to go through all of his tapes and get them all transferred and scan everything. So it was awesome. I wanted to have the most complete package. And I think that that's another good thing, is like when a small town or like a group of friends or something make a movie, it's like nice to have just a collection of all their work in one thing. People from that town, maybe their grandpa was in the movie or their mom or something. It's like now they can have that Blu-ray and, oh, here's all these old pictures of my mom like making this movie. Here's some like deleted scenes that we've never gotten to see. So it's cool to be able to do that for people and to do it for myself. All of our releases are things I want to own first and foremost, just because I was already buying Blu-rays and Vinegar Syndrome stuff. So all the releases are things I think are cool and good movies and stuff. So it's cool to be able to just do that for fun, basically, get to release things.
What was his reaction when he saw it all come together?
Oh, I was a little nervous. I didn't know, because we got new art painted, and that's always tricky. Is like sometimes they'll be like,
it's like, what was wrong with it before?
Yes, exactly. They'll be like, this is shit. Why couldn't you just use the original or let me like do the art myself or whatever? But he loved it. He messaged me instantly. He's like, oh, I love the art. The release is amazing. He bought a Blu-ray player just to watch it. Said he watched all the special features in a day. He loved the interview. And I think he's been getting some new attention that, he might not have gotten before. Like the local newspaper in that area did a whole new article about this release, and he's got interviewed for it. So I think he's loving the attention and the new release. And I haven't seen really anyone shitting. Like everyone, like I said, it's really hard to hate this movie. And so he's loving all the positive feedback and reviews that he's getting, which I think before we released it, maybe the movie had like 2 or 3 reviews online total. And now I think I saw there was 60 reviews on the Vinegar Syndrome website alone, just like on the actual page for the thing, which is crazy to think about.
That's brilliant. I say it's not only rewarding for you, but it's just got to be one of the ultimate feel-good factors to know that other people are getting such a kick out of it and giving something back.
Yes, it's great too. It's like they're suspicious at first, thinking it will never happen and like doubtful with each release. When we show up at their house to do the interviews, they're like, maybe like they're actually serious about this. But still, like, I feel like every release we've done until the day like it's actually out, they've all not thought it was going to happen. And then once it did, it was like the best feeling in the world, just seeing them happy that a movie that they haven't even thought about in like 20, 30 years is getting this new, super nice, high quality release. That's the best feeling. That's pretty much why I do it and why I'll continue to do it. I have so many releases on the schedule that I'm so excited about working on and getting out there.
So there's quite a few things in the pipeline. You're constantly working on new projects.
Yes, we just had to turn in something a few days ago, and now we have to approve artwork to just keep going and going. There's tons of releases. I think on the 12th of August, we're doing another trip where we're getting multiple interviews for different releases. So we're just constantly doing more and more, which is really fun. It's like nice to be able to just like, again, kind of what we did with Adjust Your Tracking, be able to travel with my friends and talk to people about movies, which is basically what I do at home. But it's nice to be able to do it, get to hear all these stories and stuff. And I think we're going to a few amusement parks. It's another thing. We went to Disney on the Adjust Your Tracking tour. Like we always, do a little extra touristy stuff while we're traveling. So it makes it even more fun to just hang out and get this stuff done.
Awesome. And so kind of in closing, 10 years since Adjust Your Tracking, do you maybe have any clue as to what the next 10 years holds for VHS?
I don't know. I mean, I think going to just continue to grow. I don't see it stopping. I think more major studios, even saying this, it's basically already happened, but more major studios will realize doing a VHS of new movies is something they can make money off of. I mean, they already released Blu-rays that look like tapes, those like weird art things. Stranger Things had like a VHS. Like I mentioned, Terrifier. I mean, that's not like a major studio, but still it's up there. I think it'll just continue. It's going to be like vinyl. I know like Urban Outfitters, they've already reached out to people to carry VHS in their stores, and they carry vinyl in their stores. It's going to be like that. They sell record players. I think stores will start selling new, probably really bad quality VCRs.
That's going to be interesting if it grows beyond the actual tapes into actual players as well.
So I know there's like websites where people do sell VCRs and will do like custom VCR type of things. But I think it will get to the point where even stores are doing it and just continue to grow. Hopefully more movies come out of the woodwork that I've never heard of that I can find, maybe release. And I love that aspect too. It's like there's a bunch of different companies. It's cool to have the archive of the actual tapes themselves, but it's also nice to have people that want to archive it even further and get it onto like a disc and Blu-ray. A lot of the people that made these movies are getting up there in age. So it's nice to get their stories and get them documented and get them on a nice release. So I hope that continues to grow, which I do not see it stopping. Vinegar Syndrome adds new partner labels every second, new companies, Mondo, TerraVision, like it goes on and on. Arrow, that every company doing these nice releases of these old movies. It'll never stop, I don't think. And maybe in 10 years, there will be DVD. I already seen a tiny touch of like DVD collectors, people that have a fondness for that. I saw people talking about the old like snapper cases, the old paper cases, which I even have a fondness for. So I think maybe in 10 years, somebody will do a documentary about the people who are still buying DVDs. Who knows?
There's no telling, mate. But it's crazy. Like I felt the excitement back in 2013. And so for it to still be ongoing now, 10 years later, and like the sky's the limit, it's pretty awesome.
Yes, I agree. It's amazing. I love it. I love seeing just how it continues to grow. And I love that we had a, small part in it and that we can do this new release and also release other movies. Like it's awesome to still be involved. And I just love movies.
Big thanks to Dan Kinem for spending some time with us on the Straight to Video podcast. I love picking his brain on all things VHS, and I look forward to deep diving into all the extras on the new 10-year anniversary edition of Adjust Your Tracking. You too can grab your own copy from vinegarsyndrome.com and find loads of cool stuff over at adjustyourtracking.com. Now, some of you know this past weekend marked the 1-year birthday of our 80s video shop over in Alfreton, Derbyshire, just 10 minutes from junction 28 of the M1. We wasn't sure how to mark the occasion. I'd reached out to a bunch of movie folk to see if they could come do a signing like we've done in the past, but whilst they were interested, we just couldn't get the dates to work. So we said, screw it, let's just have an open day at the shop, show some movies and have a fun time. And you know what? It was awesome. Thanks to everyone that came along to celebrate. Cheers to everyone that brought gifts for the shop. But most of all, just thanks to everyone who has been along over the last year or shown words of encouragement, because that's what's made it so worthwhile. We hope to keep this going for as long as we can. So please keep up to date on all the social media platforms at 80s Video Shop. And hopefully we'll see you over there soon. So that's all for this episode. But as always, I'll be back next Friday. And until then, always be kind, please rewind and unwind. And I'll speak to you all real soon.